Good evening, earthly sojourners. Advent is a time of hope and anticipation. About 60 years ago, when I was in junior high, our school experienced a tragedy that impacted numerous lives. It all began with a field trip to hunt rabbits. Maybe some of you recall that in the 1940s and 50s, it was not unusual for teenagers to hunt and fish to help provide food for family meals. Economic recovery was still slow after World War II. On this particular day in March 1954, three teenagers who were accomplished hunters and had hunted many times together were headed for a brushy area near the railroad trestle over Elm Creek, about a quarter of a mile north of Fairmont, Minnesota. This was the dream place to hunt rabbits. As the teenagers were approaching the hunting area, they met up with Barry, a classmate, who was rabbit hunting for the first time. Barry asked if he could join the group. Without raising safety issues in those days, the group told Barry, of course, he could walk along the railroad tracks as they approached the trestle. Once he reached that area, he was to watch the rabbits running ahead of the three hunters who were working the lower land near the railroad tracks. Barry was thrilled to have the best spot to hopefully see the rabbits attempting to outrun and circle behind his friends. And then, as Barry hoped, he witnessed exactly that. He raised his rifle, tracked the rabbit, and then the moment presented itself for Barry to shoot. He squeezed the trigger just as the rabbit ran behind one of his classmates. The shot, which was intended for the rabbit, impacted the head of one of his friends. The anticipated joy of shooting his first rabbit was replaced with the horror of seeing blood gushing from a face. He was so grief-stricken that all he could do was sit down with tears flowing and watch as his classmates carried their friend to a nearby farmstead where they found a farmer at home who immediately drove the seriously injured hunter to the Fairmont Hospital. I don't know how long Barry remained alone in the field, but he did manage to walk home to tell his parents about the tragic event. They notified the police, who interviewed Barry as to the circumstances of the hunting accident and concluded that it was truly an accident. As bad as that day was for Barry, he had no way of knowing how his junior high classmates would react to the shooting. Before that day, Barry had been one of the guys in the school. But this tragic day was dramatically going to affect the subsequent interactions between Barry and his classmates. They weren't very supportive of him, but the worst that happened was being isolated during his last 4 years in school. Barry seldom had much to do with or talk to his classmates. He became known as the guy who had shot his friend. I sensed that he wanted to be left alone. In retrospect, all of us should have reached out to Barry, but unfortunately, we somehow didn't know how to show nor share our feelings toward accepting him for his accidental shooting. 4 years later, we graduated from high school and went on to different endeavors. For some, jobs, for others, college. Some years later, while in college as an undergraduate, my mother informed me that Barry had taken his life. He had left a note with these words, "I almost killed my friend." A tragic ending for a very unfortunate accident. During the intervening years of college, graduate school, and a new career as a professor, the memory of Barry and that tragic day faded away. Some years later, my wife Karen, our three children, were home visiting relatives during the Easter season in Fairmont. As part of this visit, we visited the cemetery where my parents are buried. This only encouraged us to walk around other grave sites of family members, which often resulted in extended discussions of previous family experiences. Then, we came upon a gravesite that I had long forgotten. It was Barry's. I stood there for a long time, trying to recall how that day changed Barry's life and my life too. As you have probably realized, I was the classmate that Barry accidentally shot. So did the shooting impact my life? Decidedly so. During my academic career, I had numerous situations where students would come to my office to share with me some very unfortunate situations they were experiencing. One particular student, who had recently returned from the Navy, was contemplating suicide. A quick flashback to Barry. And a quick thought of a memory verse I'd received at my confirmation. Revelations 2:10, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." The thought occurred to me, did he lose trust in God because he felt so alone? No hope? Walls were caving in on him because his father was still blaming him and rejecting him for causing a very unfortunate farm fire. And he wouldn't even allow his own mother to comfort him. After many hours of discussions with him and a chance conversation he had with a fellow student, which led to many more in-depth exchanges of ideas and feelings, he slowly emerged as a confident person. Later, at his insistence, I attended his graduation to meet his future wife, who was the fellow student, and her parents. His future mother-in-law hugged me and said, "Thanks for saving the life of our future son-in-law." It was a very emotional gathering. I feel that my previous hunting experience, ending in near tragedy, prepared me years later for those moments to know and understand his emotions, and always recalling my confirmation verse, the feelings he was experiencing, and the hope for a future that brought his father and mother to accept him for who he was and what he wanted to accomplish with his life. The warm hugs and embraces showed that love and hope can never be destroyed. From a spiritual point of view, I have gained an understanding of life that is both theologically and scientifically supported. When one is looking at life at the molecular level, it is virtually impossible to conclude that there is not a God. But there is a God who is good, a God that is forgiving, a God that gives hope to all who seek him. In the early 1900s, our journey on this earth was eloquently stated by Palmer in a religious narrative. He wrote, "Let us remember that we are but sojourners on earth, that we are fast hastening to our long homes. And let the benign anticipation of happiness hereafter make us triumph over adversity and instruct us in the proper improvement of afflictions, that they may efficaciously work out for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." Thank you for listening.